My husband used my car to pick her up. While I worked nights, he drove my car to his girlfriend, the same one who warned me a year ago. I ignored her until she sent dashcam footage of them kissing as he mocked my voice and said, "She can't afford to leave." He used my paychecks for her gym membership while I took the bus. When I confronted him, he said, "Get over yourself." So I quietly filed for divorce. But first, I sold his gaming setup to pay off my lawyer. I was halfway through my night shift at the hospital when my phone buzzed. It was a random number with a message that said, "You need to see this." There was a video attached, dashcam footage from my own car. At first, I thought it was a prank. But then I saw it, my husband, Jake, in the driver's seat, grinning like an idiot. In the passenger seat was her, the same woman who had messaged me a year ago saying, "He's not faithful, I'm sorry." I'd blocked her back then, thinking she was just trying to stir up drama. But now, there she was, laughing, her hand sliding over his arm as they pulled into the parking lot of a gym. Her gym, the same one he'd convinced me to pay for as a favor for his friend. Then I heard him say it. "God, she's so clueless," he laughed. "She'll never leave, she can't afford to." The girl giggled and asked, "You think she knows?" He made a mocking version of my voice, nasally, whiny, and cruel, and said, "Jake, why do you smell like perfume?" Then he laughed until my dashcam picked up nothing but the sound of their lips touching. I swear, for a second, I couldn't breathe. I was standing in the hospital hallway, surrounded by machines beeping, people walking by, and it felt like I'd just been gutted open. The kicker. That same car they were in, the one they kissed in, was the car I paid for, the one I took a bus to avoid driving too much because he said we needed to save gas money. He'd been using my car to go see her while I was pulling doubles just to keep us afloat. When I got home that morning, he was asleep on the couch, his arm thrown over his face, acting like a man who worked hard all night. I watched him for a long time, wondering if this was the same person I'd trusted for 8 years. When I finally woke him up and told him I knew, he didn't deny it. He just rubbed his face and said, "Get over yourself, Emily. It's not that deep, you're being dramatic." Something inside me snapped quietly. No screaming. No throwing things, just this cold calm. I realized I'd been funding his lies, his little romance, his fantasy life built on my exhaustion. So I nodded, smiled, and said, "Okay." And I meant it. I didn't fight. I didn't argue. I started planning. I started by checking our joint account. He'd been transferring money every Friday, small amounts, to a savings fund. The name on it, her initials. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, and whispered to myself, "You have no idea what you've just done." The next day, while he was at work, I opened a new bank account in my name only. I spoke to an attorney. I told no one. I let him keep thinking I was broken. But I wasn't broken. I was building something. Something he'd never see coming. And before I filed for divorce, before I told him I knew everything, I did something first. Something that made him wish he'd never underestimated me. And it started with the one thing he thought I'd never touch. Jake wasn't always the man who mocked me behind my back. Or maybe he was, and I just didn't want to see it. We met in 2015 at a barbecue in Tampa. He was charming, funny, and had that lazy confidence that made people want to be around him. I was in nursing school, living off ramen and caffeine, and he was working construction jobs here and there. I liked that he was rough around the edges. Real, or so I thought. He used to bring me coffee during my clinical shifts, sit outside my apartment with a smile and a box of donuts, saying he just wanted to see my face. When we got married 3 years later, everyone told me I was lucky. "Jake's such a good guy," my mom said. "He'll take care of you." Except he didn't. It started small, him losing a job, me covering bills until things picked up. Then it became normal. He'd say things like, "You're better with money anyway, babe," and I'd just nod, telling myself I was being supportive. When I picked up night shifts to pay off the car, he'd complain that I was never around. When I came home exhausted, he'd roll his eyes if dinner wasn't ready. There were times I caught hints, receipts for restaurants we never went to, Uber charges at midnight. But I told myself he was just hanging out with friends. I wanted so badly to believe that loyalty still meant something. A year ago, that woman messaged me. Her name was Lauren. She said, "You don't know me, but your husband's been texting me. I ended it, but I think you deserve to know." I showed him the message. He laughed. Said she was crazy, that she'd been stalking him at the gym. He even made me feel guilty for doubting him. You really think I'd cheat on you, he said. You're all I have, Em. I blocked her. I deleted the message. I remember crying that night, not because I believed her, but because a small, quiet part of me did. After that, he got slicker. He started using my car to pick up supplies. He'd get home late, smelling like cologne, saying he'd been helping a buddy. I'd make excuses for him in my own head. Maybe he was just trying to feel useful while I worked all the time. But the truth is, I was afraid to know. I was paying our rent, utilities, phone plans, everything. He used my credit card for groceries and gas, and I never said no. I told myself that's what a good wife does. When I saw that dashcam footage, it wasn't just the betrayal that broke me. It was realizing how long I'd been lying to myself. 8 years of bending backward for a man who looked me dead in the eye and said I couldn't afford to leave him. He was right, financially I was cornered, but emotionally, I was done, so I started moving carefully, quietly. I smiled at him when he made fun of me for being too sensitive. I let him believe he still had me under his thumb. But inside, I was tracking every dollar, every lie, every weak point he had. Because when I finally hit back, I wanted it to hurt, and I already knew exactly where to strike. The night everything fell apart started with rain. Heavy, sideways rain that soaked through my scrubs as I waited for the bus at 11:30 p.m. My car, the one he was driving her around in, was in the shop, according to Jake. But I knew better. When I got home, his boots were gone. The keys weren't on the hook. My chest tightened, and I just stood there in our quiet apartment, water dripping from my hair, staring at the spot where his lies used to hang. I walked into the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept receipts and bank statements. I had started collecting them months ago, tiny slips of paper that told the truth better than he ever could. Every one of them had a story. The dinners I never ate, the gas I never used, the gym payments that weren't for me. That night, I laid them all out on the table in neat little rows, organized by date, by amount, by insult. I made copies. Then I opened my laptop and started transferring every shared bill out of my name. Slowly, methodically. The only thing still linking us was the car, my car, that was technically under both our names. That was his pride. He told people it was his ride, that he bought it for me out of love. What he didn't know was that I still had the dashcam footage, and I'd already downloaded it to a hard drive. I checked my messages again, and Lauren, the other woman, had texted me back. He told me you were separated. I didn't believe him, so I started recording. She sent more clips. They were worse than the first one. Him talking about how he was bleeding me dry, how he didn't need to work when she's dumb enough to. I wanted to throw my phone against the wall. Instead, I thanked her. Then I asked her for one favor. I told her I wasn't mad at her, that she'd actually done me a huge service. I told her I wanted to end it in a way that would make sure he never did this again to anyone. She agreed. She said she wanted to help. That was the moment I stopped being the victim and started being something else. The next morning, I woke up early and acted normal, made coffee, kissed him on the cheek when he came into the kitchen half asleep. He smirked like nothing had happened. Like the night before, I hadn't seen him stick his tongue down another woman's throat inside my car. I went to work. I smiled at patience. I counted down the hours. Then, during lunch, I made one call to my cousin Mark, who worked as a mechanic. He owed me a favor from way back. I told him I needed a special kind of tune-up for my car, something that would help me track exactly where it went and record every sound. He didn't ask questions, just said, "You got it." That weekend, Jake told me he was going to visit his brother. I handed him the keys and told him to drive safe. As soon as he pulled out, I opened my phone and watched the tracker go live. I could hear him through the mic, laughing, talking, bragging. The same voice I'd once trusted with everything. But this time I was listening and recording. By the end of that weekend, I had every word, every address, every lie. And I knew exactly how to use it. By the time Monday came, I had everything. GPS routes, full recordings, timestamps of when he picked her up and dropped her off. I was ready to burn it all down, but then something unexpected happened. Lauren texted me again. "Can we talk? It's about Jake. It's important." We met in a small cafe near downtown Tampa. She showed up in a gray hoodie, nervous, glancing around like someone being watched. She looked younger in person, mid-20s maybe, but her eyes had that tired look of someone who'd seen too much. She ordered a coffee, then said, "I wasn't completely honest with you. I didn't say anything, just waited. She took a deep breath and said, "Jake wasn't just seeing me." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "He's been talking to a few women, online mostly. He tells each of them that his wife is emotionally unstable and that you're threatening him. He uses your name, your job. He even showed one girl your hospital badge as proof." For a moment, the cafe noise faded. All I could hear was my pulse. She slid her phone across the table. There were screenshots of texts, my name, my face from Facebook, even messages where he pretended to be me, sending angry paragraphs to women he was flirting with. He made fake accounts in my name to make them think I was some jealous wife stalking him. "He told us you hit him once," she whispered. "That you check his phone, that you're controlling. It's why none of us tried to reach you sooner." I sat there, numb, while she kept talking. Apparently, he'd been meeting some of them at the gym, others through apps. But Lauren wasn't like the rest, she'd caught on early. When she confronted him, he flipped, said she was crazy, started showing her proof of my supposed abuse. She said, "That's when I started recording him, because something about it felt off." That something saved me. In her recordings, Jake bragged to another woman that he had a good setup, a wife with benefits, a side piece who made him feel alive, and a few girls who sent him money for gas or bills. He was scamming women using my car, my income, my name. And the worst part, he'd been using my credit card points to buy gift cards, ones he sent to them as gifts from his business. I left the cafe shaking. Lauren apologized again, but I told her not to. I told her she gave me exactly what I needed. When I got home that night, Jake was on the couch, watching TV, acting like he hadn't turned my life into his personal con. I stood behind him for a long time, watching the back of his head, thinking about every lie that came out of his mouth. Then I smiled. I walked over, kissed his cheek, and said, "I was thinking maybe we should do something special this weekend." "Just us," he smirked. "Finally, you're starting to come around." If only he knew. Because by the weekend, I'd already talked to my lawyer, the credit card company, and the local police's cybercrime division. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was that I wasn't the only one planning something. Lauren had a surprise of her own, and she wanted me in on it. When Lauren texted that night, "You free? Let's talk, bring Mark." I felt a thin, cold thrill run through me, not the kind that makes you shout or smash things. The kind that makes you too quiet and too focused. Mark came over like I'd asked him to pick up groceries, but he brought tools and a look that said he knew this was bigger than a tune-up. Lauren arrived 10 minutes later, hoodie up, eyes scanning the room like a cat. She smelled like cheap coffee and cigarette smoke. I remember thinking she looked smaller up close than she sounded in the texts, less the other woman villain and more the roommate of a broken man. We sat at my kitchen table with pizzas in boxes, and the evidence spread between us like a map. Dashcam files, screen grabs of fake profiles, stacks of bank statements showing transfers to gym memberships and gift cards. The audio files Mark had synced from the car mic. The recordings were the worst, him saying things into the phone like it was a trophy. He was so casual with his cruelty that hearing it felt like a needle under my skin. "What do you want to do?" Lauren asked, voice small. She looked at me like I had the chart for the rest of her life. "What I want is for him to not be able to do this to anyone else," I said. My voice didn't shake. I lied if I said I didn't want him to hurt. I wanted him to lose what he'd stolen. I wanted him to understand what it felt like to have your life cataloged and weaponized against you. Mark leaned forward. "Legally, we can hit him on fraud. He's been using her financials as cover. With the recordings, the transfers, the forged profiles, this lines up." He pointed to the files. "But the bank will stall. The police will stall. Men like him count on that. So we built something that wouldn't stall. Step 1, sever his money." I closed the joint account that morning and opened a new one under a shell I set up with my lawyer, enough paperwork to make him think the joint account was still active. I kept receipts flowing out of the old account for appearances, but automated payments moved to the new one. He noticed nothing because he never looked. He trusted his freedom more than his curiosity. Step 2. Evidence consolidation. Mark burned duplicate hard drives and encrypted copies in 3 places: my cousin's garage, Lauren's external drive, and a safety deposit box in my name. I filed timestamps with a lawyer to prove chain of custody. I called an accountant friend who agreed to trace the gift card purchases and link them to his card points. We had names, amounts, dates. It smelled like success. Step 3, bait. If he was going to flaunt, we needed him to flaunt publicly. Lauren wanted revenge in a more primal way. She wanted him to feel exposed. I wanted him bankrupt and unemployable, so we combined both. We arranged a surprise party at a bar he liked, one where he'd brag in front of friends about how he had it all handled. I texted him like a normal, slightly needy wife. "You coming tonight? I made plans." He accepted. We rehearsed with Lauren how she'd behave. Cool, casual, the woman he'd been wearing like a badge. Mark rigged a small mic that would feed directly into my phone. I planned to record the room, the faces. My lawyer advised against anything that looked illegal, no fabrications, no entrapment, so everything we'd use had to be things he did of his own volition, on record, in public. That sounded righteous in my head. It sounded surgical. It sounded like something I could live with. The night before the setup, I watched him sleep on the couch open mouth, chest rising. Part of me still wanted to grab him and beg for the boy who brought me coffee in nursing school. Part of me wanted to kick him awake and drag every truth from his throat. Instead, I poured the last of my wine down the sink and laid out a fake itinerary for him. Work trip to a friend's house. So he'd be at the bar, comfortable, cocky. When the night came, I practiced smiling in the mirror until it felt like armor. Lauren whispered, "Tonight's for you," and squeezed my hand. Mark tapped his watch. I texted him again from my phone. "Can't wait to see you." He replied with a heart emoji and a selfie, grinning, already drunk. I didn't answer. I turned off my phone screen and felt the evidence like a small, heavy thing in my chest. We walked into that bar together, and the air smelled like spilled beer and expectation. He was there, tall, careless, surrounded by guys who loved his version of him. I had one plan, one recorded list of everything he'd done. I had allies and paperwork, and the taste of what was to come. What I didn't know was that one of the pieces on my table that night wasn't just evidence. It was a key to something else, something Lauren hadn't told me yet. And when the bartender called his name, my stomach dropped in a way that felt like falling into an unknown room. The bar was loud, all clinking glasses and bad country music, but when the bartender shouted Jake's name, the whole world seemed to slow. "Jake, you got a delivery." He turned, all smiles, swaggering toward the bar like the king of his little kingdom. The bartender slid a plain brown envelope across the counter. Jake looked confused for a second, then smirked, like it was some joke one of his friends set up. He tore it open right there, and then his face changed. The laughter drained out of him as he pulled out the contents, printed screenshots, photos, bank statements, all neatly arranged and stapled. His voice cracked when he read the first line of the letter attached. "We know what you've been doing. This is your official notice of investigation regarding fraudulent financial activity involving multiple parties, including misuse of a joint account belonging to your wife. Emily R." I stood a few feet away, drink in hand, pretending to scroll through my phone, but my heart was pounding so hard it felt like the floor was shaking. Lauren stood near the door, staring at him, her face unreadable. But then I noticed something. She wasn't looking at him, she was looking past him, toward a man sitting at the bar's far end. He was older, maybe mid-40s, in a black jacket, watching everything quietly. He gave her a small nod. She nodded back. Something inside me shifted. Jake started yelling, loud enough for everyone to hear, swearing he didn't do anything, waving the papers around. His friends backed away. One of them muttered, "Dude, what the hell is this?" And that's when Lauren walked forward. Calm, controlled, she said, "This is what happens when you scam people." He froze, blinking at her like he couldn't process it. "Lauren, what the F **K are you doing?" The entire bar went quiet. Then she said it. "I'm not just one of the women you lied to, I'm the one you stole from." And the man in the jacket stood up, pulled out his badge. He was a private investigator. Lauren wasn't just some random girl Jake met at the gym. She was working with her uncle, the PI, who had been hired months ago by another woman Jake had scammed before me. A woman who'd lost thousands in loan help to him under fake names. Lauren had gone undercover to bait him, to gather evidence. But when she realized I was real, when she realized he was actually married, she broke. She told her uncle she couldn't do it anymore. But he told her they were too close to finishing the case. That's why she reached out to me. When she told me that, standing right there in the middle of the bar, my knees almost gave out. Jake turned pale. The private investigator handed him an official notice to appear for questioning. People were filming, whispering. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked again. "This is insane. You can't do this here," the PI said. "Consider this your reality check, son." Jake looked at me then, really looked. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I walked up slowly, met his eyes, and said, "You should have stayed loyal. You could have had everything." Then I turned and left. Out in the parking lot, Lauren caught up to me. She looked like she wanted to apologize again, but I just hugged her. I told her, "You didn't ruin my life, you exposed it." But as we walked away, she said something that made my blood go cold. "Emily, he's not done. You need to be careful. He told me once, if anyone tried to destroy him, he'd destroy them first." That night, I locked every door, double-checked every window, because I knew Jake, and I knew that look in his eyes before I left the bar. He wasn't going down quietly. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump, the air conditioner kicking on, the pipes groaning, the neighbor's dog barking outside. My mind replayed the look on Jake's face at the bar over and over. The white shock when he realized he wasn't the predator anymore. The rage that followed. The next day, a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit called. They'd gotten a formal complaint from the PI's firm and had enough to open a joint investigation. He wanted a full statement from me. I agreed. But before I could even go in, Jake showed up at my apartment. He looked awful, unshaven, dark circles, reeking of cheap whiskey. He stood outside my door for almost 5 minutes before knocking. I didn't open it. He just started talking through the wood. "Emily, listen," he said, voice raw. "You don't understand what's happening." I said nothing. He kept going. "They're making it sound worse than it is. You think I wanted to do that? You think I chose it?" Something in his tone made me stop. I'd expected denial, anger, threats, but he sounded desperate, like a man trying to justify something much darker. He said, "It wasn't about you. It was never about you. It was about control. They took everything from me before I ever met you. I had to find a way to get it back." I opened the door an inch, just enough to see his face. He looked hollow. Like the charm had been stripped off and all that was left was something cold and rotten underneath. He told me the truth then, and I wish he hadn't. Back when he worked construction, he'd been part of a job that went bad. His boss got caught for embezzlement, but Jake was the one who took the fall for misplaced funds. He lost everything. He swore he'd never let anyone else have control over him again. When he met me, he saw what he called leverage. I was stable, hardworking, trusting. He said, "You made it too easy. I didn't even mean to at first." But when I realized how much you'd cover for me, I stopped feeling guilty. Then he laughed, this broken little sound. "Every woman after you, they were practice. I wanted to see how far I could go without getting caught." I remember whispering, "You used me to feel powerful." He looked straight at me. "You were proof I could win." Those words hit harder than any slap could have. He wasn't cheating for love or sex or boredom. He was doing it because hurting people made him feel in control. Because every time someone believed his lies, it fed that twisted need to prove he was smarter, stronger, untouchable. He said it so casually, like he was talking about fixing a flat tire. "I figured you'd never leave," he said. "You were too good, too loyal. That's the kind of person you destroy just to see if they'll still stay." I closed the door then, locked it, called the police to report his visit. When the officer showed up, I asked if they thought he'd do something worse. The officer said, "People like him usually don't stop until they lose everything." That stuck with me. Because that's when I realized my revenge wasn't about humiliating him anymore. It was about taking back every ounce of control he ever stole from me, and I already knew exactly how to end it. I didn't want revenge that looked like something out of a movie. I wanted it clean, undeniable, and permanent. I wanted him to lose the tiny, ugly empire he'd built on other people's trust and my exhaustion. First, I let the legal machine chew him. With the PI's files, Lauren's recordings, the bank traces Mark and the accountant put together. And my sworn statement, the Financial Crimes Unit had everything they needed to freeze accounts and subpoena records. I sat in the sterile interview room and answered questions with the same calm I'd used when I'd charted a patient's meds. Precise, unemotional, thorough. Every time the investigator asked for a receipt or a timestamp, I handed it over. No melodrama, just facts. While that unfolded, I finished cutting the last of his financial ties. Joint accounts closed, cards canceled, auto payments rerouted. I signed paperwork to take my name off liabilities he'd hidden. I reclaimed whatever I could prove was mine. I sold the things he'd bragged about: golf clubs, speakers, the his stereo, and used the proceeds to erase the last of the debt he'd piled on me. Every transaction felt like stitches pulling a wound closed. Then came the exposure. I worked with my lawyer to file civil suits for fraud and emotional damage. We kept everything above board: documents, timelines, witness statements. The judge assigned a hearing, and I walked into that courtroom in scrubs from a day's shift, shoes scuffed, face raw, and I told the truth. I set the recordings on the table and played them. I watched his posture collapse as people heard him bragging about abusing trust as if it were a skill. His friends in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. His lies wouldn't stand next to paper that proved otherwise. He tried to speak in his defense, mumbled something about being stressed, about mistakes. The judge didn't humiliate him, the law did. The financial penalties were crushing, but the real damage was reputational and structural. Places he'd worked didn't want the trouble. Landlords tightened references. The women he'd used got restitution where possible. He had to give back what he couldn't keep. But the best part wasn't the court's orders. It was the little practical victories. The bar where he'd boasted banned him, his gym put his profile and membership on hold, and the group chat where he'd celebrated his scams went silent as the screenshots circulated. People who once admired him quietly deleted him from their lives. I didn't gloat publicly. I let the outcomes speak. I went back to night shifts. I learned to enjoy bus rides again for myself, not as penance, but as a reminder that I could choose the small inconveniences of my life. I started saving in a real account under my name, a little ritual every payday to remind myself I owned my future. Months later, the divorce was final. He had penalties to pay he didn't have, and I had a clean slate. I don't pretend it didn't scar me, the petty theft of dignity, the years I'd ceded control, but I also refused to be defined by what he took. I taught myself boundaries the hard way and rebuilt a life that didn't revolve around his whims. Sometimes I see him from a distance, at a grocery store or around town, a smaller man than the one who used to stride through my life with entitlement. I don't smile, I don't wave. I feel a cold satisfaction that is quiet and complete. I lost a marriage, but I reclaimed myself. And that, in the messy arithmetic of betrayal, is worth more than anything he fraudulently banked on.